Hi, welcome to Pods with Posh and Pool. We are live today. Welcome to all our listeners. It's great to see you. We're talking today on healthy relationships and what that looks like. And on Tuesday, we were thrilled to release Beverly, who we call Auntie Bubbly, who was talking about healthy relationships for our teenagers. And today we want to give you 3 tips, 3 tools to empower your teens to find healthy relationships.
Yeah, the podcast was called Understanding Healthy Love because it came about because both Sue and I deal a lot with teenagers and grown-ups actually, and I think people didn't really understand and don't understand what healthy love looks like. There's so many people out there in relationships. We all have role models around us, and if we can actually all take a little think, stop and look about who we think has a really healthy relationship, and whether that's in friendships or in love, there's not that many good examples, are there? And I think especially with the people that we're dealing with a lot of poor teenagers who are in angst and in internal agony, and they're not getting the support and the love that they need from their friends or perhaps their boyfriend, girlfriend, and that's where this all stemmed from, wasn't it?
And I think, from my experience of living in boarding schools, raising teenagers, we make the assumption as parents that teenagers fumble their way through it and find their own place where they have healthy relationships. But actually, most of it comes down to communication. And if you're listening and you're a parent, we want to give you those 3 tips today to empower your teens, which is to communicate with them the following. 1 is how to be safe in relationships, whether it's a sexual relationship or whether it's just friendship with peer group.
Yeah.
2 is healthy boundaries. And 3, what are the 5 love languages, so that your child understands how they want to receive love and how they express it themselves. So the first one is how to feel safe in relationships. And we want you to have that conversation. We want you to sit down. Car journeys are a really good time to have conversations with teenagers because they can't get out, they're trapped. But meal times are another really good time. Sit down and have a conversation. Most parents don't talk to their children through the teen years, and I've seen this again and again and again. Please have conversations with children and teach them like you're teaching a 2-year-old. What is a safe relationship?
Well, a safe relationship is one that does not involve control, manipulation, any form of abuse, whether that's physical, emotional, psychological. People aren't clingy, people aren't needy. Instead, safety is filled with respect, honour, and beautiful words, laughter, fun. It's more laid back. There's no high tension in these relationships. And to feel safe, I think we've all got to learn to listen to what's inside of us, because we all have intuition, and you can call it what you want. You can call it gut instinct, intuition, your psyche or whatever. But we all get told within ourselves whether something is okay or not, and it's about tuning into that and listening to it. Like if you're in a group where there's peer group pressure happening and perhaps everybody's gonna take drugs and you don't feel comfortable with it, well, your gut or your intuition tells you that, and something just doesn't lie quite right with you, well, then you don't have to do it. It's about listening to yourself and understanding what's safe, and actually understanding what a relationship should look like. It shouldn't be filled with, as we say, manipulation or control. People shouldn't be trying to trick you into things or forcing you into things. They should respect your wishes, your decision, and you should be able to be exactly who you are within a relationship. If you have to change if you have to change who you are in any relationship, then that perhaps it's not the safest environment.
And a good tool with your teens is to get them to discuss relationships that family relationships, friendships that you have yourself, peer group at school, and to say, can you identify out of all our friends and family which relationships, whether it's a couple, a married couple, whether it's people just girlfriends, boyfriends, whatever it is, can you identify who you think has got a healthy relationship? Maybe they can do it with an uncle and aunt or their grandparents, and then get them to name what it is about that relationship that they think is healthy, and then get them to do the same thing with an unhealthy relationship, and get them to name for themselves without suggesting the answers yourself, is to say what particular thing can you identify about that relationship that makes it unhealthy? Is it the fact that they're arguing? Is it the fact that there is disrespect? So then they can start to identify for themselves what they think is important in a relationship. We have to apologise because we've got our new Navy ship arriving today. So it's a big thing because we don't have many Navy ships in New Zealand. So our big new ship, which for many countries would seem quite small, is arriving at 10:30. We've got a fly past about to happen. So we've got helicopters everywhere. And we have got a 21 gun salute about to happen as well, I think. So anyway, we'll let that go in the background. So all that noise is the Navy ship outside. So please get your children to get involved. Don't just have a conversation where you're telling them information. It doesn't go in. Get them to ask lots of questions. What is it you think a healthy relationship should look like? When you're in relationships at school, when do you feel your intuition telling you you're not safe? So again, teach them about intuition. Teach them about that they have an innate sense of knowing. Ask them, when is it you feel out of your comfort zone? Not necessarily in relationships, but in situations with a teacher in school or a classroom where they are asked to put their hand up and speak and they don't want to. When are they aware of their intuition? What is their intuition saying to them? Because that is the most healthy tool they will have as they go into adult relationships, their intuition, and get them to respond to it. If you feel uncomfortable, listen to what your intuition is saying and respond to it, because most people afterwards are very quickly able to say, I wish I'd listened to what I knew. And we do know, we innately know. And the other thing to get them to ask is, at the beginning of a friendship, what did you like about that person? Or what were you suspicious of? Or what you were wary about? And get them to do it with their girlfriends, their boyfriends, teachers. When they first walk into a class, they are so knowing, children. They know good teachers instantly. And get them to say, what was it about that teacher you thought was going to be a really good teacher? And was that true 6 weeks later? Did you feel the same thing? You don't like this teacher. Did you pick that up at the beginning? And what did you pick up? So teach them those skills before they start getting into sexual relationships.
Yeah. And then with that comes hand in hand with healthy boundaries. And we all need to have healthy boundaries, no matter what relationship is, whether it's with friends, lovers, even employees, employers. Wherever we are, we need to know what our values are, what our boundaries are. And it stops us having expectations on other people to change or to be a certain way. Instead, we live in line with our boundaries. So for instance, if your teenager doesn't want to take drugs, that's their boundary. And so if their friends are taking drugs and they choose to not take drugs, they can maybe still even be around their friends but choose to say no because it's their boundary. Or what their boundary might be, well, I actually don't want to be with these kind of people anymore, and I want to go meet new people because I want people who are more likely to do the things that I feel comfortable with. And again, that goes back to safety, but putting in the healthy boundary to keep you safe. And healthy boundaries are so important in every relationship, because as soon as we don't have our boundaries there, we let our guard down in a way, and we let things come into our life that don't feel good to us in any relationship. We find ourselves saying yes to things that we perhaps want to say no to, and it puts us in a compromised situation if we don't know what our own boundaries are.
And again, start talking to your children before they're teenagers about boundaries. Sit down with them and say, at school, in a given situation where you're in a group, what is acceptable, what's not acceptable? Would you allow one of your friends to bully one of your other friends? Will you take a back seat because you don't want to get involved? Or will you stand up for that child? What is okay for you? And teach them that their boundaries will change as they get older, and their boundaries will change as they learn what they are happy to accept in their life or not. Their boundaries will change as they learn what their values and principles are for themselves. So teach it early. Talk about boundaries. Talk about what your boundaries are in your relationships with men and with women, with friends and with family. And certainly families often don't get on. What's a healthy boundary to have between a sibling as an adult that you don't get on with, or a friend you don't get on with but you've got to carry on having a relationship with? Talk about boundaries all the time, so it becomes an innate part of their being and they start to build boundaries into their life.
Yeah, because I think what happens if we don't have boundaries, what we start to do is we start to put our worth in other people, and we go out searching for our own worth, and other people's opinions of us matter, and we may allow that to then start control us, rather than understanding our own worth and being comfortable in our own decisions and therefore allowing our boundaries to stay in place.
And that's really critical, isn't it? Because if we put our worth in somebody else and their values of us change or their opinions of us change, then we're literally on a roller coaster ride accordingly. That's what we feel about ourselves. So self-value, self-worth, self-love, so important to teach your children, isn't it? To be independent of other people's values and opinions.
Because we've got lots of teenagers between us, and I watch my children come home and I see their friends and my son's girlfriends and things, and their friendship groups are not very kind, you know, and then one day they might have like a best friend, and the next day this best friend's gone off with somebody else, and then all of a sudden their worth has been given to that relationship and that friendship, and they're feeling really bad about themselves. Because you've allowed your worth over, you've given your self-worth over to somebody else. And that's why it's really important for us as parents to role model self-respect, self-love. We've got to have good opinions of ourselves so our children really can see that and they can feel that, because that's definitely energy-based. We can say we love ourselves, but if we're standing in the mirror and really hating on ourselves, it comes across in our energy. So we've got to really role model that to help our children along the way, because it's a really difficult thing to do.
And again, it comes down to conversations all the time, doesn't it? You know, your mum or your dad is having a really hard time right now. I'm in a pretty bleak place, but I'm going to find tools and strategies to love myself in this situation. A, B and C have rejected me, but I love myself and I'm going to push on through. And they will learn from you. They will actually mimic you and copy you.
Yeah.
So our third strategy is love languages. If you don't know the 5 love languages, research them online, read about them. We're releasing a talk in the next couple of weeks about the 5 love languages, again with Auntie Bubbly, who's great. And learn what first of all, before you teach your children, learn what is your love language. How do you express yourself in terms of love? And I mean, the 5 love languages are gifts, acts of service, time, touch, and
words of affirmation.
So is it that you love to be hugged and touched? Is that your first love language? Teach your children what their love language is, and teach your children what they will be looking for. So if their first love language is words of affirmation, and they're seeking that and they're not in a relationship and they're not getting it back, then they might feel rejected. But you can explain to them that the other person's love language might be acts of service, and therefore they are being loved, but it's not the same love language. So to understand the 5 love languages is really key to your child having a healthy relationship and being able to get their needs met, and also be able to meet the needs of the person they're in a relationship with. So again, if you want to subscribe to our podcast and also like our Facebook page, so you've got all the updates as to what we're about to release. But that's a really good conversation about the 5 love languages.
It's really great for parents and children anyway. So as a parent, if you can go away and read the book, it's a really simple book to read. It's in layman's terms, it's really easy to understand. He writes beautifully, and if you can understand your love language, often you can, as you're reading the book anyway, you can pick up the love language of your children, what they need and what they require. It actually really helps you communicate with your child in a deeper way, and maybe it actually teaches you tons about yourself as well. But then you can start to see with whoever you meet in the world, you can actually pick up on their love languages as well. It's a really incredible book to read.
And I find it really interesting having 4 children whose love languages are all very different, because as mothers we tend to be busying and we express our love for our children because we're, you know, doing nice things for them, baking cake, keeping the house tidy, cooking for them, and that's a love language. But then you might have a child come to you and just say, but I don't feel you love me. And I start to think, gosh, I'm doing all this for you and you don't feel loved. But actually they just need lots of time, or they need cuddles and hugs, and they're not getting it because I'm busying myself. So again, where do we go wrong as parents? What do our children actually need when we think we're loving them and they feel they're not being loved? Where is it that our paths aren't crossing and we're just sort of missing each other like that?
Absolutely. And it's so easy to do, but it's also so easy to rectify, and that's a really nice thing. It's not a difficult thing to do. You know, if your child wants words of affirmation, you might just need to actually say the words I love you a little bit more often, and they shine when they hear the words. Or you might just literally, if it's physical touch, you might just literally have to like pat them as you walk past. They might not want a full-on hug if they're 6'3" or whatever, but they might just want a little pat, and it just makes them feel comforted. Or it might be quality time, so you sit down, you have one-on-one with them, and you know, and the list goes on. Or it might be little gifts, and it doesn't have to be monetary value with gifts. It can just be, you know, maybe you found their favourite chocolate bar in the supermarket, or a protein drink, or whatever the case may be. But it's, as we say, it's easy to rectify and easy to implement into your life, and actually really fulfills your life as well when you understand people's love languages.
So all these 3 tools come down to communication, being safe in relationships, having healthy boundaries and knowing your love languages is about communicating. There's a big flotilla out there. Oh, there's the new ship coming in, which is AOT as our new ship. It is about communicating with your children. And again, from my years of experience in boarding houses, is that parents stop communicating with their children. They think their children now are teenagers, they're young adults, they can fend for themselves. They can't. It's all about communication, and this is the critical time. I mean, if you've missed communication and conversations at a young age, it's harder now, but have communication, have healthy conversations all the time at this stage. Teach them, read, go online, listen to podcasts, listen to our podcast, and teach your children. This is the time that they're going out into the world as young adults, but they're still young and still so immature and don't know the facts and the information. They're going to make their mistakes. So give them that solid platform of conversation and keep talking all the time. Role model. As I said, when you're having a hard time, talk them through that hard time so that they can see you've got resilience. They can see that you go from problem to solution, and there's a process in between. It's not that there's a problem and then it's, well, I've got to opt out because life is really hard. You teach them the solutions all the time. Conversations and communication. So do please go and listen to our podcast we released on Tuesday with Beverly. And we're releasing an incredible podcast next Tuesday with Mark Mondino, talking about his inner journey, that he's been on a soul-searching journey to find himself after a surf accident and becoming quadriplegic. And as we say, we're releasing a podcast for teens on the 5 love languages. So please subscribe and share us to your friends, because we're all about mental health. We're about impacting mental health. We're about learning resilience. And you don't know of who of your friends are suffering from depression or anxiety, having a hard time, because we don't say it, we're not honest. Share it on your Facebook page and stay tuned.
Thank you very much, and remember, the best thing you can do is go and role model healthy love and healthy relationships for your children so they really understand, and if you can't do it for you, do it for them. Thank you.